Have you ever felt like your whole life was just ticking away second by second, yet nothing truly moved inside you? What if one broken clock in a quiet Danish town could remind you that time itself might have been lying to you all along? The quiet town of Ribe. Ribe is the oldest town in Denmark, a place where the streets are made of cobblestones and even the wind seems to whisper history. The air smells like rain and old wood. Every morning, you can hear church bells echoing softly across the rooftops. As if time itself has slowed down to take a deep breath, people here walk slowly. They greet each other by name. There are no skyscrapers, no noise, no rush. Just rhythm, the kind that makes you remember you're alive. If you listen carefully, you can even hear the sound of the river Ribe flowing behind the town square, like a quiet song nobody ever finishes. In the middle of this peaceful place stands a small clock shop, narrow, old, and slightly leaning to one side. The sign above the door says, Lars Andersen, Time Repairs. The windows are dusty, the clocks inside are ancient, and the smell of oil and brass fills the air. To a stranger, it might look forgotten. But to the people of Ribe, it's a part of their heartbeat. Every tick and every talk that comes from that little shop seems to hold a story. Some say if you stand outside the door long enough, you can hear whispers of memories, laughter, regrets, promises that never aged. Ribe isn't just a town where time passes. It's a place where time remembers, and one day, a young visitor would walk into that quiet shop, and discover that even time can tell lies. The old clockmaker. Inside the small shop, behind the counter covered in gears and half-fixed watches, sat an old man named Lars Andersen. His hands trembled slightly, but they still moved with grace, as if time itself obeyed his touch. Every wrinkle on his face looked like a story of patience, and every sigh carried the weight of someone who had listened to too many ticking hearts. Lars wasn't just fixing clocks. He was fixing memories. People brought their watches not only because they were broken, but because they wanted a part of their past to work again. A father's old pocket watch. A mother's wedding clock. A gift from someone who no longer calls. Lars repaired them all, silently, carefully, as though afraid he might wake something sleeping inside. But there was one clock he never touched, the large wooden one in the shop window. Its hands were always wrong, always late or early, never right. Tourists often pointed it out, wondering why a clockmaker couldn't fix his own clock. Lars would just smile faintly and say, "Some clocks tell the truth better when they lie." He lived alone in a small apartment above the shop. Every evening, he would climb the creaky wooden stairs, light a candle, and eat dinner by the window, watching the townspeople walk by. Sometimes, he'd whisper to himself, "Another day kept alive." He wasn't bitter. He wasn't sad. Just suspended, like a man living between seconds. Ribe loved him quietly, but no one really knew him. Not yet, until one rainy afternoon, when a young woman from Copenhagen stopped outside his shop, her eyes caught by the clock that never told the right time. A young visitor arrives. Her name was Anna. She was 24, a language student from Copenhagen who had come to Ribe for a quiet weekend, away from deadlines, notifications, and noise. She was tired of everything moving too fast. Fast news, fast love, fast failure. Ribe, she thought, might help her breathe again. As she walked through the rain-soaked streets, her umbrella dripping, she noticed the strange little shop with a crooked sign that read, "Time Repairs." The name alone made her stop. Through the fogged window, dozens of clocks ticked in different rhythms, some loud, some soft, some not at all. But one stood out, a big wooden clock in the center, its hands frozen at 11:11. She smiled. Of course, even time needs a break, she whispered, half joking. But curiosity pulled her closer. She pushed the old wooden door open, and the bell above it gave a tired ring. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of oil and dust. Shelves lined the walls, packed with clocks of every kind, pendulums, cuckoos, pocket watches, even one that looked like it belonged on a ship. Behind the counter sat an old man, wearing a magnifying lens over one eye. He looked up slowly. "Good afternoon," she said softly. He nodded. "Good afternoon." Looking for the time, or trying to escape it? Anna laughed nervously. Maybe both. That was how it started, not a grand conversation, just a strange one. She told him she studied English and came here to rest. He told her he used to believe in perfect timing, but not anymore. Then she asked about the clock in the window, the one that never told the right time. He paused. His eyes softened, but his voice turned distant. "That one doesn't need fixing," he said. "It tells a different kind of truth." Anna didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But something in his tone, that quiet ache behind the words, made her want to return the next day. The clock that lies. The next morning, Anna came back, this time without an umbrella. The rain had stopped, but the streets still glistened, reflecting the early sun like thin rivers of light. The clock shop was already open, and Lars was standing by the window, polishing the same old clock that never told the right time. "You're early," he said, smiling slightly. Anna grinned. "Or maybe your clocks are late." He chuckled, the sound rough but kind. "That's possible. Around here, we let time take its time." Anna stepped closer to the window. The clock was beautiful, carved with tiny stars and moons, its hands frozen at 11:11. But something about it felt alive. The tick from inside wasn't steady. It came and went, like a fading heartbeat. "Why do you keep it wrong?" she finally asked. "Isn't that the opposite of what a clockmaker should do?" Lars looked at her, really looked at her, as if weighing whether to tell her a secret or keep it buried. Then he said quietly, "Because some truths hurt more than lies. That clock reminds me that not every second deserves to be remembered." Anna frowned. "I don't understand." He smiled sadly. "You will. One day." Then, instead of explaining, he began to teach her how to listen to clocks. Not just hear them, but listen. He said every tick had a rhythm, a personality. Some clocks were anxious, ticking too fast. Some were lazy, always behind. And some, like this one, chose to stop when life became too heavy to measure. For the next hour, Anna forgot about the world outside. She listened to the music of time, hundreds of small hearts beating in metal and glass. But the wooden clock in the window remained silent, its hands unmoving, like a secret refusing to be spoken. When she left, Lars called out softly, "Come back tomorrow. Maybe I'll tell you the story of that clock." And for the first time in months, Anna felt something stir inside her. Curiosity, warmth, and a quiet sense that time, somehow, was beginning to move again. The secret of the lost time. The next day, Ribe was covered in fog. The streets looked like they were floating between dreams, and the air smelled of rain and coffee. Anna walked back to the little shop, heart beating faster than usual, not because she was late, but because she knew today Lars would finally tell her the story behind the broken clock. Inside, the shop was quieter than usual. The sound of ticking was softer, almost respectful, as if the clocks themselves were waiting. Lars sat by the window, the old clock resting on the table in front of him. When Anna entered, he didn't look up. He just said, "Every clock in this shop has a soul. But this one, it carries a memory." He gestured for her to sit. And then, slowly, he began to speak. "Many years ago," he said, "I made this clock for my wife, Alina. She loved the sound of ticking. Said it made her feel safe, like life was still moving forward. We used to drink tea by the window and listen together." He paused, his eyes lost somewhere far beyond the walls. "One winter night, I promised I'd fix the town's church clock before midnight. I told her I'd be back soon. But I wasn't." The shop went completely silent. "Anna didn't move when I returned," he continued. "The candle had burned out, the tea was cold, and she was gone. Heart failure, they said. But I've always believed it was time itself that betrayed her, or maybe me. I built this clock to mark the moment she left. 11:11. It stopped on its own that night, and I never had the heart to make it move again." Anna felt her throat tighten. "So that's why you said some truths hurt more than lies." Lars nodded. "Yes. A working clock reminds you that life keeps going. But this one reminds me of the moment it stopped, and how love, sometimes, can't wait for time to be fixed." He smiled faintly. "I suppose it's my punishment, and my prayer." Anna sat in silence, her heart heavy but strangely warm. The ticking around them sounded different now, softer, sadder, but more human. She finally whispered, "Maybe time didn't betray you. Maybe it just wanted you to remember her forever." Lars looked at her, eyes shining with something between pain and peace. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe time forgave me a long time ago, and I'm the one who hasn't." Outside, the church bells began to ring, 11 times. And for the first time in years, Lars didn't flinch. The lesson of imperfection. The fog began to lift from Ribe the next morning. The sunlight poured gently across the cobblestones, and in that soft light, Anna returned to the shop again, not as a visitor, but as someone who had begun to understand. She found Lars sitting quietly by the same window, holding a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He looked up at her and said, almost playfully, Do you know what's worse than a broken clock? Anna shook her head. A perfect one, he said. Because it tricks you into thinking you have control. That sentence lingered in her mind. It was true. She had spent so much of her life chasing perfect grades, perfect pronunciation, perfect timing. Yet she still felt behind, out of rhythm with herself. Sitting there, surrounded by clocks that ticked imperfectly, she realized that maybe the problem wasn't her timing. It was her fear of being late. Lars picked up a tiny silver watch and handed it to her. You see this? It's 2 minutes slow. But it still tells a story, still moves, still matters. People are like that. We're all a little off time. Anna smiled. So, it's okay not to be perfect. It's more than okay, Lars said. It's human. They spent the morning talking about mistakes, second chances, and the beauty of doing something badly but with love. Lars explained how every clock needed tiny flaws to stay alive. If it were truly perfect, he said, it would stop. Because perfection doesn't move, only life does. Anna began to see her English practice differently too. Every time she stumbled on a word or hesitated in a sentence, she used to feel ashamed. Now, she realized each pause was a tick, a heartbeat of learning, not failure. Before leaving, she looked once more at the silent wooden clock in the window. Its hands still rested at 11:11. But now, it didn't seem sad. It seemed peaceful. She turned to Lars. If someday that clock starts again, what will it mean? He smiled softly. It'll mean I've finally forgiven time. And for the first time, Anna felt ready to forgive herself too. The clock starts again. The next morning, Rybe woke up to a sound it hadn't heard in years, a deep, steady ticking echoing from the old clockmaker's shop. It wasn't loud, but it was unmistakable. The wooden clock in the window, the one that had been silent since Alina's death, was finally moving again. The townspeople noticed first. As they passed by, they stopped and stared. The clock's hands pointed to 7:03, perfectly on time, and its pendulum swung like a heartbeat reborn. Nobody knew why. Some said Lars had finally fixed it. Others whispered it was Alina, sending him a sign. Inside the shop, Lars sat at his workbench, looking at the clock with quiet disbelief. He hadn't touched it. Not a single gear, not a single screw. It had simply started on its own. Right after dawn, when Anna arrived, she found him sitting there, smiling for the first time. Not his usual polite smile, but something deeper. You hear that? He said softly. It's like she came back to tell me it's time to live again. Anna stood beside him, watching the pendulum swing back and forth. Maybe it's not about her coming back, she said gently. Maybe it's about you finally moving forward. He nodded, his eyes glistening. Perhaps both. Maybe that's what forgiveness sounds like, a clock starting again. They sat together in silence, listening to the rhythm of time filling the little shop. Outside, sunlight spilled through the window, touching the dust in golden streaks. It felt like the whole town was breathing again. Later that afternoon, a small group of locals gathered by the shop. They smiled, pointed, and told each other the story, how the clock that once lied now told the truth again. How an old man and a young woman had somehow made time start to heal. Rybe felt different that day, lighter, warmer, more alive. Even the church bells seemed to ring brighter. And as Anna walked away from the shop, she looked back one last time at the window. The wooden clock kept ticking steadily. And beneath it, someone had placed a small handwritten note: "Time doesn't heal everything, but it helps you learn how to love what remains. Time is not the enemy." A week later, Anna prepared to return to Copenhagen. Her bag was light, but her heart was full. Rybe had changed her, not with grand lessons, but with quiet truths that spoke louder than any textbook. She had come here to escape time, and somehow, she had learned how to live inside it again. Before leaving, she visited Lars one last time. The little shop looked brighter now. The air no longer smelled of sadness but of oil, dust, and warm light. Every clock ticked in harmony, imperfect, uneven, but alive. Lars greeted her with a smile. "Heading back to the big city?" She nodded. "Yes. I'll miss this place." "You won't," he said. "It'll stay with you." Rybe doesn't leave, it lingers, like an echo of time well spent. They stood in front of the wooden clock, still ticking gently at the window. Its steady rhythm filled the silence between them. Anna whispered, "Do you still think time betrayed you?" Lars took a slow breath. "No," he said. "Time never betrayed me. I just stopped listening to it. I thought time was the enemy, but it was only waiting for me to forgive myself." Anna smiled, her eyes soft. "Then maybe time isn't about counting seconds, it's about feeling them." He nodded. "Exactly. When you start feeling your life again, even the hard parts, time becomes your friend." She looked at him for a moment, memorizing the image. The kind old man surrounded by ticking hearts. A shop full of memories that had learned to breathe again. As she stepped outside, the cold wind brushed her face. The town bell struck noon, echoing through Rybe's narrow streets. For the first time, Anna didn't hurry. She walked slowly, savoring every sound, every heartbeat, every second, as if each one was whispering, "You're here. You're alive. You're enough." Back inside, Lars watched her go, his reflection faintly visible in the glass. Then, he turned to the clock and whispered, "Thank you, Alina." The clock ticked on, steady, calm, forgiving, because time, after all, was never the enemy. It was the mirror, showing us not how fast we live, but how deeply we choose to.